My first question to you is, what role does translation quality and terminology consistency actually play in how AI understands a brand?
Mhm. Yeah, well, in crypto, I mean, we are launching campaigns, products, features, maybe almost every week. Let's say maybe every 2 weeks, right? So even like as humans, if I try to tell you that we are launching a product A, but if I call product A like in different names, product B, product C, product D, but all of them is product A, I think even as humans, we would get confused, right? Because the terminology is inconsistent there. So we are calling the same product feature three different things across three different pages, across across different content types. So we are mixing some borrowed English terms and using those also inconsistently, and that English term was never meant to be used for that local market, and that term doesn't really even adapted in local market, so people don't search it. And when you do that, you're actually fragmenting your own entity in front of AI models. So the model now has to guess which term you actually mean and which product you want to talk about, which product you're promoting. And most of the time, as I said before, it usually defaults the most common form. So that can be the English form, that can be a form that you use mistakenly, but that's not your product name. So I think the terminology is one of the way to build authority, and it's one of the critical ones. And the other one is the quality. So Google, and not so sure about AI crawlers, but Google is very good at detecting machine translated content. So especially if you are doing low effort machine translation without human at the center. So, and raw machine translated content maybe can take you from point A to point B for 3 days. But after 3 days, when Google detects that, you will be back to point A, maybe even minus A. So that is not good. So here the choice in the quality side is actually not between translating or not translating. So yes, you still need to translate or you still need to create content. But I think here you need to invest in quality and with strong human at the core and AI assisted review, or producing content that really gets quietly discounted. So what I build at OKX is actually a workflow where machine translation and AI assisted drafting are starting points, and they are not the end points. I think that we need to align in the industry. So for example, one of the things we learned at OKX was that orchestration alone was never enough. It wasn't enough. So we first built a content workflow where the system could collect search context, connect with performance data like search console, and understand the locale in local prompts, and generate content automatically from those previous steps, complying with the local prompts set on optimized for each language. But very quickly, we saw that context also mattered a lot. By context, what I mean is like knowledge bases. So we added local segmented knowledge bases, not just one English knowledge base, because if you add English knowledge base, that is still not fully relevant to your local market. So each market needed its own term-based examples, compliance rules, especially if you're in a regulated environment. You can't offer the same product for three different regions. There are limitations. And the model AI cannot estimate it. You need to put it under your context or in your knowledge base. So and we also structured those knowledge bases in a way that AI could actually chunk and retrieve from them properly. This requires some coding and engineering support, but anyone who has a small technical background can also build that. So eventually, that reduced the hallucinations, it improved the terminology consistency, and it even allowed us to automate internal linking more accurately without depending on third party SEO tools. So I think the lesson for me was here AI doesn't replace localization judgment. It needs a strong local context layer to work well. And of course, human at the core to optimize this process, refine prompts, manage context, And edit and sign off is super critical in this workflow. That's why it is not really human in the loop anymore. It is human at the core. So that's why I think localization teams need to reposition themselves. If you're a part of a localization department, I would highly suggest, looking from this perspective. So we are not just translators anymore. We are entity stewards. And for our brand and in each market, we are contributing to the growth.
Yeah, and I love that framing that you just mentioned there, right? Localization teams as entity stewards, if you will, because I think it really captures how much the role of a localization manager or team member has really expanded. Like you mentioned, it's no longer just about whether or not the words are accurate or just translated precisely. It's about whether or not your brand is actually being represented consistently, credibly, and locally in a way that search and AI systems and bots can really understand, right?